So, Jeremy, it's so lovely to finally have the possibility to talk to you. I've been following you for so long, and I absolutely love your content, and you have so much to say. But before we kick off with our topic, would you mind sharing a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's good connecting with you, and same, I follow you. I love a lot of the content that you put out, a lot of thought-provoking stuff. So thanks for doing that. So yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeremy Hyde. I am the Director of Customer Service for Sun Country Airlines. We are based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then I also serve as the president of the Midwest Contact Center Association, or MWCCA. That's a nonprofit networking organization for contact center leaders. We have a chapter in Minneapolis and a chapter in Chicago. So I've got my day job with Sun Country, and then volunteer some of my time to try and help build the contact center community locally here based out of Minneapolis.
And before we kick off with our topic, I just want to take the opportunity for everyone to follow you. So how can people find you? Can you give us a little bit more details? Because again, I just today read another one of your blog posts and it was absolutely amazing. And I feel like this is a content that should be spreaded even for a wider audience. So how can we find you, Jeremy?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Jeremy Hyde, HYDE. Give me a search and you'll find me.
Perfect. And the topic that I'm super excited about, and it comes straight away from your background, it's about air travel. And I feel this is such a high intensity industry. And just before we hit the record button, I shared my latest story about traveling to the US. All the misfortunate things that happened during the travel. And I feel like when we're talking about air travel, it's so time sensitive. So every delay, every cancellation, whether you're traveling for business or for personal purposes, it has such a direct impact on your life. And that's one of the things that tends to frustrate people quite a lot. So I was thinking, from a planning perspective, is it different planning for air travel industry? What are the challenges and what can you tell us about it?
Sure. Yeah. I think when we talk about the fundamentals of WFM and planning and staffing models and that sort of thing, I think the fundamentals are the same from industry to industry. The fundamentals are the same whether you're small or you're large. But the challenges can be different, of course, and maybe the level of flexibility and kind of ability to ramp up and down, like that's where things start to become a little bit more unique. And that's for the airline industry specifically, like that's where I think things start to become different. So as you alluded to, when it comes to air travel, there's delays that happen and cancellations and, weather things, hurricanes and snowstorms and all of that sort of thing. And those things obviously have a great impact and cause a lot more demand, a lot more need from customers than would otherwise be expected. And so when you think about kind of like forecasting, staff planning, all of that, let's use weather as the example. You cannot predict when you're going to get a snowstorm in Minnesota in January. You know it's going to happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen. Or if there's going to be wildfires in California, during the summer. There's a good chance it's going to happen, but you can't predict when. So I think when you look at your forecasts and your planning and all of that, you can probably, based on historical and what you know about kind of the business for the future, you can probably do a pretty good job of forecasting workload for the year. You can probably even do a pretty good job forecasting workload for the month. It's the volatility day to day that becomes challenging. So, if we have a snow event, wildfire, hurricane, whatever the case may be, our volume swings wildly. And so, it could be maybe an event that's not totally significant. Maybe you see 20, 40% over your original forecast. And it's not ideal, but you can probably muddle through that. But there might be cases where you're 200% over forecast, and so it's like when you start thinking about situations like that, then you start asking yourself, well, what do we do? You can't staff 200% above your normal forecast, right? That would be crazy. And
Mhm.
so for us and for me, it's how do we make sure that our resources, our people resources, and our technical resources, self-service, and all of that are really scalable so that we can swing up and down. From a people side of things, we've done a lot with our part-time program. We have a significant amount of employees that are part-time. And so these are folks that probably have more ability and willingness to pick up extra hours. We also are fully remote. So if I have a snow event today and all of a sudden the volume goes crazy and I need more people, we have a program where we can send a text message or a phone call out to people's cell phones and say, hey, if you're willing, hop on for an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever, help us out. And we've seen a lot of success where we go from our baseline and all of a sudden we ramp up 50% in terms of our people resources, get us through that situation, and then we can kind of back down to the normal demand and the normal need.
I love so much that you have figured out a mechanism that works, because I can only comment from a customer perspective. And I know for myself, I've been through so many canceled, delayed flights and
Mhm.
reschedules. And there are airliners who you sincerely cannot get in touch with anyone. You can call for hours, you can send them emails, chats, nothing works. And there are others who somehow are there, who have figured it out. And I feel
Mhm.
like if we're talking about air travel, of course, not every airliner is the same, but everyone is going through the same type of challenges with strikes, with weather, with stuff happening at the airport. So it's so important to find that mechanism. And you mentioned the part timers. I was really, really curious about this one because it seems like it's really working.
Yeah, absolutely. I love our part-time program. Roughly 2 years ago or so, we had like one or two people that were part-time. They started full-time and went back to school or whatever the case may be. And so we were able to accommodate the schedules. But now it's like 75% of our contact center agents are part-time. We grew it significantly. It worked so well. We just kept growing it and growing it. They're really sticky. These are people that want to be with us. And again, I think work from home, part time for an airline that offers travel benefits. I think like it's a pretty good value proposition that we offer to folks that maybe are looking for 15 or so hours a week.
You are shattering another stigma here by talking about remote work. And we're kind of back to normal. And I certainly feel that kind of a movement again. You should be at the office because we need to make sure you're working and you're performing. But things have changed. The way people would like to work have changed. And
Mhm.
especially in contact centers where we are struggling with attrition, I'm really struggling why we're not more keen on remote work, if this is one of the perks that can really keep people working for your contact center.
Absolutely. I, I'm a big proponent for work from home. I mean, I'm at my home office right now. Um, I mean, I'll say like it's okay if a company doesn't offer remote work or hybrid or that sort of thing. Like that's okay. There may be reasons for it.
Mhm.
I think what I find challenging though is kind of the changing stipulations or like starting people off remote and then changing your mind and forcing them back to it's that sort of thing, kind of where people feel like the rug was pulled out from underneath them. I was sold on one thing or I've been doing one thing, and now for some reason that probably isn't driven by outcomes or performance or anything, like we're just suddenly changing direction and now everybody has to change their lives. That's what I struggle with. Like
Mhm.
organizations can be what they want to be as long as they're upfront and they're clear and they're transparent, and there are people that want to work in the office too. So that's the thing, right? Is like if you want to work in the office, do not come and work for me. If you want to work remotely, don't go and work for the place that makes you work in the office. But organizations need to be transparent about what they are, why they are, and not put people through that. Like, oh, are you going to be remote? Oh, you got to come back to the office. That's what I struggle with personally.
Yeah, and I feel like this is giving additional level of stress to
Mhm.
employees. Like, as you mentioned, just be transparent, and usually people were quite on board and quite able to make decisions from themselves if something is working or not. So definitely there should be more honesty and transparency in our hiring process, I would say as well. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is, from agents' perspective, we mentioned it's a very high intensity environment. People tend to be very frustrated if an event has occurred, and I certainly can say from my perspective, especially if I'm missing my flight, I need to reschedule, the app is not working and nobody's picking up. If eventually somebody picks up, I might not be able to fully stay calm. So from agent perspective, they're kind of dealing with customers that are often on the frustrated side. So
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? How do you make sure that they are performing, that they're not going to burn out? Is there additional level of flexibility that you can deliver to them?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think fairly quickly people start to figure out like if this industry is for them or not. And unfortunately, part of it is what you described. Like there are going to be situations that don't go the way that people want them to go, and there's going to be frustrated, upset people. And not even just industry specific. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, um, the level of volatility from customers has just ramped way, way up. As we went through the pandemic, and there's just like all of these pressures within society. Some of the boundaries of what was okay to do and say as a customer, or just interacting with people, some of that seems to have changed for the worse, frankly, in terms of yelling and cussing and making threats of physical harm towards people. Like, these are the sorts of things that contact center agents out there are dealing with, and customer service agents at grocery stores are dealing with. And it's a really sad reality of how things have changed. I mean, in terms of kind of dealing with that, supporting the agents, preparing them, all that sort of thing. I mean, job number one for me is doing everything that I can do to avoid those situations. So, like, how do we put ourselves, our customers, and our agents in the best possible position? Now, I can't guarantee that there won't be a flight delay or a cancellation or a snowstorm, right? I can't do that. But what can I do to make sure that our technology, our people, our self-service, expectations of customers, like all of those are in the best possible place? And then again, like supporting our agents kind of through those things. Like, we're always going to have folks that are available to help support an agent with a difficult situation. Like, truly always there's someone that's there if they're needed. And then just preparing them, you know, in some of these sticky situations, like how can we convey empathy and move things forward? What are the sorts of hot button words and phrases to avoid, things that maybe are going to go over a little more smoothly? And so, not only just at kind of like a new hire level, but with recurrent trainings and coachings and such, trying to continue to help develop that with people. And then lastly, I think just letting them know, like, things are going to happen, people are going to be upset, and like, that is an unfortunate reality. That doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. Do your best to kind of work through that, ask for support if you need it, if you need to take a moment to gather yourself. But I think people just kind of have to be honestly prepared for that. And again, like, it's not going to work for some people. There are some people that is, whether they've experienced, things in their past that make them prone to having a difficult response to a difficult conversation or something like that. You kind of do have to have a little bit of thick skin, though.
Yeah, however, want to take a pause for just mention one thing that's very important for me, for everyone who thinks that being an agent is a super easy job and you're there sitting in front of a computer, picking up the phone, just trying to be there, picking up the phone with a frustrated customer after a frustrated customer, and see how easy that is in the end, and trying to solve the issue in the meantime. So
I think people would be shocked at some of the things that people do and say. I think they would truly be shocked. I mean, again, like, name calling, threats, like the level of abusiveness is unbelievable at times. And it's not like it's every customer, but that small few have a really big negative impact. So yeah, it's like, be kind to people. Just everybody be kind. Even if you're upset, be kind. Do your best to stay calm. Don't personally attack somebody. Don't call them names. It's okay to be upset. You can be upset. That's totally justifiable in some cases, but like, still be nice.
Be nice. And you mentioned one thing that's very important, show empathy, and empathy goes both ways. You need to show it to your customer, but equally you need to show it to the advisors and to the people that are actually trying to help you. And it's not their fault if there is a hurricane. Let's put it out there. They didn't cause it on purpose to screw up your plans. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, one last question maybe from my end to wrap this conversation is, I'm very curious about technology and how technology can be your friend in that type of an industry. How do you leverage that?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly industry specific technologies that we leverage that really are airline focused. I'll say through COVID, I think we all experienced, crazy things during COVID, right? Things that we never imagined would happen, problems that we never imagined that we would have to face. For example, in March of 2020, that's really when COVID started to kind of take hold in the US. And I can remember this vividly. I was actually on a trip in Los Angeles at the time with my family on spring break, and we weren't really sure what was going on at COVID, and all of a sudden it really started to hit. And so there was this day in March of 2020 when things really started to kind of go the wrong direction, a day where we would have typically received like 2,000 phone calls, and we had 60,000 call attempts that day. 60,000. It was like everybody was trying to cancel their trip all at once.
Oh, wow.
And what can you do? I mean, there's nothing that you can do, really, right? You're going to help about 2,000 of 60,000 people. But I think the experience that day and the months and the couple of years following that really, for me, created this new focus around scalability, where I hadn't been as focused in the past. And so from a technology perspective, I mean, what that means is like our people are super important and they need to be prepared and ready and capable and all of that to serve. But also, we can't be a people-powered organization. We can't just rely on people to serve the needs of the customers. And so this is where we've put a lot of focus on digital and self-service and that sort of thing. We have a really close partnership with our e-com team, so we can be thinking about what does the web need to do, what can't be done on the web today that's driving volume to us, how can we continue to attack those things during a disruption, during a delay, a cancellation, how can we get information and, if warranted, accommodations to people digitally, if we want to provide a meal or a hotel. We can't hand them a paper voucher. Now we've got hundreds of people that are waiting in line to get something like that, calling to ask about how to use it, trying to call and go their own way. Like, we need to make things work really well and really efficiently. Again, if you're experiencing a disruption, a delay, or a cancel, if you want to change your plans, you want to look at flight alternatives, like, I need to put that power into your hands rather than you having to call or contact us so that we can grant some sort of an exception and make that happen. So that's been a really major focus for us over the last several years. And we can see as we look back, the kind of percent of passengers that call us, the percent of passengers that have to call us, dropping significantly. And so now as we look at the future and we think about growth, we've gotten to this point now where like everybody's traveling again, everybody wants to travel, that demand is there. And so if we want to continue to grow to meet the growing demand, my team, with the same amount of people or less perhaps, can do more work. We can grow and we can scale without having to double in size and triple in size because of this work that we've been doing and that we will continue to do. So yeah, I think scalability is really, really big. We were having a conversation yesterday with a vendor that offers a solution. And when we were thinking about it just at a high level, it was like, oh, that could work. That's efficient. But then we started to break down, like, what is the total opportunity here? What's the scope of the opportunity? Okay, we think that this thing could possibly resolve this many issues, prevent this many phone calls because people would be able to get their answers, that whatever the case may be, right? And when we start to dwindle down, like, what is the scope of the opportunity compared to the resource lift and the cost and all that, we started going, while their product is good, it may not be a good fit for us because that scope of opportunity isn't large enough to justify the work and the cost that would come with it. And so I think this is where people need to be kind of working through these things and not just saying like, hey, yeah, that looks like a good product that could probably work for us. You got to do the work to understand the actual impact. Like, what are the assumptions that you have about what the impact will be? How do you validate what that scope of opportunity is? All that sort of thing.
This is so important. I think we should make another conversation purely based on this key takeaway, because I have seen it from my career as well, that a lot of people are, oh, we're on a growth trajectory, so we need the software. Why? What exactly do you need? Like, we need to see what will change, how it will change, what would be the impact. It's not about going there and buying or spending money on something fancy that might not give you that much, to be honest.
Right.
And this is exactly the exercise that needs to be done.
Well, and I think the last thing I'll say on that a lot of leaders and contact center leaders specifically may not do, figure out what technology you already have within your organization that you might be able to leverage. So, years ago, we needed a knowledge base. We had something that we were using. It wasn't even really a knowledge base. We needed a knowledge base. And so the first thing that we did before we went out and started talking to vendors is talk to our IT partners and partners within the organization. And we found out, hey, ServiceNow, that system that they use for ticketing, it has a knowledge base module. We have that module as part of what we pay for free. Hey, do you want to use this knowledge base? So we did. So that's what we did. We built our knowledge base on ServiceNow, a product that we already paid for. It didn't cost us a dime. And so I just think that's another thing for leaders to do, is start looking at what are things that we may already have that I don't know about that could be leveraged at either no cost or low cost because we're already doing business with this company.
It does remind me a little bit on your closet at home and the closet you're having. Don't necessarily go and buy for something else without actually checking what you already have in place, because you might be surprised about the clothes still with labels that you have in your wardrobe.
Yeah.
So it's a great one. Thank you, Jeremy, so much for this conversation and giving us the insights from the air travel industry. That's something that I'm really, really curious about. And I'm going to take the chance for one more time to invite everyone to follow you on LinkedIn, because you're putting absolutely great content with a lot of tips and tricks for planning out there. So follow Jeremy and you won't be disappointed. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you.